Hi, I'm Vitina with New Moves. I want to welcome you to our show this evening. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about how not to take things for granted. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can also visit us on our website, which is newmoves.com. So, as with each week, we talk about the definition of the word so that we're all discussing the same thing and we're on the same page talking about it. So, tonight, I'm going to give you the definition to take for granted. So, the definition of it, that word or those words together combined, means to value something or someone too lightly, to fail to properly notice or appreciate someone or something that should be valued. Means that tells us that the activity, the person, the thing has some type of value, but we tend to, just take it and be like, oh, that's nice. My definition is to take for granted is we misvalue people, places, and things because we don't realize the importance that that person, place, or thing makes in our life. And we tend to devalue it by not thinking about what would happen if that is not with us. So when we talk about taking things for granted, we're going to start with people. So some of the people that we take for granted, of course, everybody does this, is going to be their parents. We tend to forget that our parents is the reason why we're here. Most of the time, they're the reason why we have our education. They're the reason why we have brought generational wealth into our families because they made our path slightly easier than the path that they had to walk. We also take for granted our spouses. We forget that we were the one that chose them and they chose us. But after we made the choice, we decide that those things that irritate us are more valuable for us to discuss than the fact that they are our spouse and they are on the same team as us. Our friends, sometimes we forget that they have to put up with us just like we have to put up with them. And we forget that just like we get irritated, we irritate them as well. And our family, we are in the family we need to be in order to be who we are. We would have been a totally different person, a totally different lifestyle if we had been in a different family. We also take our abilities for granted, such as walking. Walking, we wake up, we do it, we don't think about it, we don't actually consider the effort that our body is making until we can no longer walk, or we have an illness or an injury and it causes us not to have that ability again. And then we become to say it was valuable. Our eyesight, another blessing that we feel we are owed until sickness, accidents, something that causes our ability to see clearly is removed, and then we tend to put some value on that type of life. The places that we tend to be devalue are going to be our jobs. Our jobs are the jobs that help us pay our bills and help us to live the lifestyle that we're living. But we tend to go in, we go to work, and we're constantly complaining. We complain we have to get up. We complain we have to go to work. We complain that we have to stay at work. We complain about the people that we work with. But come Friday, when we're getting that paycheck, We're happy that we get paid for those 40 hours and we've put some value on that, but we didn't put value on the fact that 20 of those hours that we were at work, we were complaining about being there for 40 hours. The funny thing about that is, does that sound familiar to some of us? That some of us just are in the habit of just taking each and every day that we have for granted. We take for granted our homes, our apartments, our cars, our schooling, anything that we just do that's kind of like a routine, we take it for granted. When in reality, we should be grateful in our minds and in our thoughts because we took a moment to realize that none of this was supposed to be ours, so that what we have is way more than we were supposed to have. Now, we even take for granted our breathing until we're diagnosed with some type of lung disease. And then we start to see that, oh my gosh, breathing is utterly important. Thanks be to our Lord and Savior that He gives us our body a memorable function that it knows to breathe in and exhale out on a daily basis to keep our lungs full of oxygen. So we would have to be mindful of our breathing, of our home, of our vehicle. I mean, think about it. How many times have you went to your car, you just expect the car to start and you put your key in the ignition and it doesn't start? You're like, oh my gosh, this car is supposed to start. Because why? We take it for granted that the key in the ignition is going to make the car start. I know I'm speaking from experience because I've had this happen to me probably the last month. Unfortunately for my friend, I call on the phone and say, hey, my car didn't start. Like, I don't know, they're Inspector Gadget and can make it start all of a sudden. But yeah, how many times has that happened? That you took for granted that your vehicle or your house was going to be okay, or you were going to be okay, and something occurred that made you realize that you should be thankful and grateful and not taking that time and that moment for granted. How about freedom? We saw on October the 7th in Israel that freedom can be marred very quickly. That you could be with your family, you could be celebrating, you could be at a concert, you could be just walking the street, and your freedom and can be interrupted. You can start to be separated from your family. You can be trapped in some place that you had never expected to be trapped in. You could be locked up and you could be all alone by yourself. And you could be feeling like you're in an upside down world. Now, you don't have to be kidnapped or anything like that to feel like you're in an upside down world. But do we sometimes get so stuck on coming and going that we forget to be thankful and grateful for our freedom? I alone with you should be, absolutely grateful. So, how do we practice being in the presence and noticing the ebb and flow of life so that we can daily work on not taking things for granted? Well, the one thing that's important is that we have to say thank you. When you start saying thank you to people, you will notice that those people will put a smile on their face because they feel like they're being noticed. And it makes you focus to think, oh, wait, I appreciate you serving my food, or I appreciate you running my groceries, filling up my groceries. Otherwise, people, they're going to make us pay for all of our groceries after we send them all on the conveyor belt instead of someone doing it for us. So if we learn to say thank you, then we start to have gratitude in our mind, and practicing gratitude will allow you to appreciate the moment that you're in. However, you have to actually express the gratitude, or you will still be the person taking things for granted. If in your mind you're saying, oh, wow, they're doing a good job, but you don't express it, you just took it for granted that that's what they were supposed to do. We have to slow down. We have to smell the coffee. We need to smell the roses. We need to smell the popcorn, if you like popcorn. If you are constantly in a rush or constantly doing things that you don't remember doing them, you just go from thing to thing and you don't remember doing them, you are more likely to take good things that occur to you in your life for granted. Stop. Take a moment. Acknowledge whatever just happened to you that was good. And maybe sometimes you'll get the thing, oh, I should call my mom. Call your mom. Don't take it for granted that your mother's going to be there tomorrow for you to call. Our number 2 is just saying thank you. Practice acknowledging people. If you practice acknowledging people, you will notice that people will start acknowledging you. And the whole idea of that is the more people we acknowledge means we're dropping a nice seed out into the universe, and we're impacting the world by acknowledging them. We will start to reap that same benefit back of people being not taking you for granted, or people being grateful for you. Having served in the military during Veterans Day, and sometimes people see that I'm prior military, they'll say, thank you for your service. You know, during Vietnam, no one said thank you to those people that sacrifice the ultimate, a lot of them, the ultimate sacrifice. When they came back to the United States, people were not saying thank you to them. I feel like we missed an opportunity as a nation to thank those people that allowed us to continue to walk the streets, go to the grocery store, or go to work. Because without the military and you saying thank you to them, you are taking for granted the freedoms that you have each and every day when you wake up and you walk outside of your house. So just saying thank you, that's an important thing to me. I say thank you to people, even if it's not necessary. You're going to see that you need to tell your kids and your parents and your coworkers, the policeman, the fireman, the cashier, thank you. And the more you know, the more you do that, the more you will feel better about it. There was actually a poll that was done probably about 3 or 4 years ago, not too long ago, where it said only 15% of people actually said thank you for services. So if 15% of people actually said thank you for services, or thank you to someone that held a door for them, or thank you to someone that maybe let them cut in the line in the traffic, just think of all of the people that does something for someone that never gets a thank you or never gets an acknowledgement for their behavior. So we're going to change that. They let us in traffic, we're going to throw up a thumbs up. We're going to say thank you. We're going to wave our hand. This is the easiest way to start not living in taking people for granted. Who's the number one that we need to tell thank you is the Lord. Blessed be his soul. We need to tell him that thank you, because he doesn't owe us anything. And definitely some of us are not doing what we need to be doing. So we need to definitely say thank you to him on a daily basis. My favorite, though, and you guys all know my favorite, is to start a gratitude journal. If you start a gratitude journal, you would be aware of all the things that people do for you, of all the things your job benefits you, of all the things that they went out of their way to do for you, of all the many blessings that you've had throughout the day that you've been taking for granted. If you started a gratitude journal and that's all you did is wrote down what you were thankful for that day, you would see your booklet would fill up so quickly because you would be like, oh my gosh, I even forgot about that. I forgot that person let me into the traffic pass, or I forgot that person moved off the sidewalk so I could walk, stay on the sidewalk and not ruin my shoes. Or I forgot that person held the door for me. But by putting it in your gratitude, it will allow you to take notice of the things that occurred to you or for you or with you during the day that we are in our hustle and our bustle that we forget. You would also see how good your spouse was, your kids were, your friends were, your parents are, because it would allow you to stop, to look, to listen to the words that's going into your brain that's telling you, oh, you look beautiful today, that you took for granted when they said that to you. You would see that your overflow of joy would start flowing out of you because now you're not taking it for granted. You're going to see that you're valuable to them and they're valuable to you because you need that from them. And you're going to see when you start to write your gratitude journal about your job, you're going to see how you really do like your job or how you really do like people in your job. Yes, we all irritate each other. That's how it is. But if you learn in your gratitude journal to write down the positive things or the things that occurred to you today that made you feel better, you will start to see that a lot of the times that the things that we're complaining about are just things that we take for granted. My number 4 was stop expecting others to do for you. I say this quite frequently that nobody owes you anything. And when you're taking things for granted, you are just expecting people, places, or things to be available to you. What does that mean? I expect my mom to answer my phone call when it's about nothing. I expect my job to give me an hour and a half lunch when I should only take a 45-minute lunch. I expect to go to the museum and it be open instead of taking the time to literally call my mom and say, hey, mom, thank you. I'm grateful for you today. Or going to work and being thankful when you walk in the door that your job is still there, that you have a door to walk through, and that you're going to get a check at the end of the week. Or that you went to the museum and the museum doors are still open and you can go into the museum. I mean, what are the things that we should be looking at saying, oh, wow, I seriously took that for granted. I learned a lesson in couple of years ago. My father passed, and I took it for granted that for some unbeknownst reason that he was not going to pass. And I had went home and I didn't see him during the period of time I was home, even though I felt in my spirit I needed to see him. But I got caught up with family, friends, hanging out, doing the things that I do when I go home. And I never went back by my father's house. By not going back and to visit him on purpose, I came back to where I live at, and about 6 weeks later, he passed. So take advantage of the time to be grateful of all of the times that you have. Another way that we could do this is be less materialistic. So we tend to take for granted our lifestyles, our income, our daily, what we do. And if you learn to daily and weekly to look at all of the things that occurs in your life. Oh, I was able to fill my gas tank full of gas, even though gas was $60 to put in my tank today. Oh, I'm not going to take that for granted, that $60, right? If you look at the world, you see the world needs a little bit more than what we take for granted. They need grace and they need peace. And so when we're looking at all of the goodness that we have, that we take for granted, that when we wake up, we don't think, we just expect it, instead of, wow, I am so grateful that I have a roof over my head. I have good health. I have a job to go to. I have all of the many things. If you start with your gratitude journal, you're going to see that you have so much to not take for granted, that you're going to be overwhelmed with joy and with happiness. I want you to do a good deed for someone that can't pay you back. That's the biggest of not taking for granted. We're coming into a season where you're going to feel pressure to give to every community activity. No, don't do that. Don't fall into the pressure. What you have to do is fill in your heart. Who should I help? What should I help? And how should I help? But I am going to tell you this, not taking others for granted, or not taking places for granted, or not taking things for granted. Sometimes we have to be careful that we're not the person being taken for granted. And I have noticed that the person that's being the one taken for granted sometimes doesn't recognize the crutch that they have become for others, or the lifeline that they've become for others. So this week, we're not going to talk about that, but I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about how not to be the crutch, or how not to be the one taken for granted. Because I'm sure, like myself, a lot of us really fall into that. We are the ones that people take for granted. And even though we're working to improve the world so that we can impact the world and make the world a better place with our ripple effect, when you are working on yourself, you want to make sure you're not the one that's taking others, other places, other things for granted. You want to be in appreciation of all that you see. And yes, you have to start it one day at a time. So you start tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to acknowledge, be grateful. I'm going to be thanking people for the time and the effort that they put into me this day. The more you purpose in your heart to be purposeful about not taking people, places, and or things for granted, the more you're going to see that you value people, places, and things more. We want you to be able to be the blessing and share the blessing. So the be the blessing is, you're going to be the one that goes through life, but you're not going to be taking people, places, and or things for granted. And to be the blessing, you're going to be able to help all of them without being the one taken for granted, which I keep saying, we're going to talk about that later on. How do we get out of that fork in the road as to be the one? And we're going to be thankful for every blessing that comes our way, whether we consider it a blessing or not. Sometimes, you think it's a detriment, but if you're positive about what's going on, you're going to see that each and every person, each and every place, and each and everything that crosses our life, event, activity that crosses our life, is a blessing for us, because we've either learned something from it, we've became something because of it, or we've gained some type of knowledge. And anytime you can gain knowledge or you can be a better you because of something that's occurred, then you shouldn't be taking it for granted. Nothing's owed to you. We talk about that quite frequently. I'm going to ask you to purpose, starting tomorrow, to not take your day for granted. When you wake up, be thankful for your breath. Give the Lord a thank you. He probably would be glad to hear from you, since it's probably been some time since you've said thank you to him. Just like your cashier would probably be shocked if you say thank you to the cashier. So let's get in the practice of doing it on a day-to-day basis, so that when we impact the world, we're impacting the world for the betterment. So remember, we're New Moves, spelled N-U-M-O-V-Z. You can visit us on our website. You can go to Facebook. You can go to Instagram. You can go to X. I don't think I have to say formerly Twitter anymore, so just X. Remember, I am a life coach. So if you're looking for someone that you just want to sit down and talk through some things with, you're more than welcome to. I help with your business, your career. I help with leadership. I help with real estate. We have on our website our store. You're welcome to go visit. So I'm going to say, see you guys next show. Stay good. Stay in goodness. Stay beautiful. And good night.